No matter what point of your education journey you were in 2020, reality is that the COVID lockdown sucked. But what if I told you that the isolation actually forced you to develop the most single sought after skill for student engineers looking to bridge the gap between university and the Australian energy sector? In this video, I'll be discussing the psychological trait of high agency individuals and how you can leverage it into graduate success in 2026. Hi everyone, my name's Jack and welcome back to the channel. Over the past 3 years, I've gone from a clueless country kid studying engineering to a full-time senior engineer working in the Australian energy sector. I've fumbled and failed a lot along the way, which is why I dedicate this channel to sharing the tips and strategies that I found successful so that you can implement them in your career and find success. Now, today we're talking about one of the more controversial topics from back in 2020. Now, you may have been in high school, you may have been in your first year of uni, like me, but we all remember the COVID lockdowns. Effectively, everything was shut down for 6 months, uni got shut, social distancing, all of that sort of stuff. It was quite not very enjoyable. So if we do flash back to 2020, it was around March, university had just started. I think it was about our 4th week. And I do remember sitting in a Maths 1A lecture and the lecturer was actually talking about this virus coming out of China. And then one of the next week or two, everything had started to shut down and reality set in that everyone was saying, in-person classes are shut down. And so me personally, I'm from the country, so I moved 2 hours back home and actually set up my my desk in my bedroom to do uni remotely. So the feeling was at the time that we went from guided learning in lecture halls, being spoon-fed all of this information and just writing it down and then going to the tutes and everyone helps you through it, to listening to Zoom lectures where most of the time a lot of the lecturers had no idea how to use Zoom. And so it was quite literally, if you can't fend for yourself, you are screwed. And I remember it quite well. Everyone was swarming to all the discussion forums, asking lecturers questions, and not to the fault of the lecturers, but they just didn't have the habits to be able to keep up with that. And also credit due to the uni IT support. They simply weren't staffed to support tens of thousands of students asking so many questions online, and the forums were just not set up for that. So reality is there was so much confusion, which turned into friction, which turned into a lack of motivation, which ultimately turned into bad performance and dropping out for a majority of students, which is just the unfortunate reality. So it was quite literally sink or swim, and a lot of people sank, unfortunately. But taking this with a grain of salt and looking back on me personally, I personally see it as a massive gift because it forced us to learn probably one of the most valuable skills as a undergraduate and a graduate, but certainly today where I am currently in modern engineering, being high agency. So for those who are new to the term high agency, looking at it kind of from a left-hand, right-hand, low-high point of view. Low agency is effectively doing what you're told. The ability to not think for yourself. So your approach to the problem, you take it with face value and you go and solve it. That's what I would refer to as low agency. High agency is more getting the result without being told how to do it. So specifically thinking through a problem yourself, applying your specific perspective and experience to this problem to solve it in your unique way. So as a bit of a visual example, it's the difference between needing a GPS for every turn, even though you've driven the same road 100 times, versus having a compass and figuring out the path yourself. So if we take a further analogy to compare the traditional versus COVID learner. So as a traditional learner, generally you rely a lot on the rubric, you rely a lot on office hours, you rely on a clear syllabus, and if the instructions are bad or the syllabus doesn't properly reflect the course content, they fail. And so that turns from, I suppose, to a work environment, then being quite fragile and needing a lot of support. Whereas let's say for a lot of students who have come into university post 2020, effectively the COVID learner, their sole experience in university is needing and having to operate in scenarios where there are broken links, there are unresponded emails, there are bad Wi-Fi. You figure it out anyway because you have to. It is sink or swim. And you find a way to submit the assignment. It might not be up to par, but the reality is because you've solved the problem yourself, you're learning so much more than if you were sitting in the classroom and were hand-fed all this stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say engineering before COVID versus after COVID is different or hard. They're all the same hard. I'm purely saying the way that you had to learn, I think it's much harder in an online environment if you are a low agency individual rather than pre-COVID. So the reality is high agency is just that important to, number one, your success in university. But what about number two? How does it really influence your success in industry? Similar to all of the other industries at the moment that are thriving in the 21st century, there is no textbook for day-to-day operations in the energy industry, specifically as we are on the trajectory of the energy transition. We are quite literally building the plane while we fly it. So from the perspective of your first manager you're reporting to, they don't necessarily have the time to be your lecturer that you are relying on in a university setting. They need someone who can take a vague explanation or a problem and then return to them, let's say in a week's time, with a solution. This is exactly what the COVID situation in university trained you to do. Operate with high agency. And for me, looking back on my time and experience in COVID, moving home, learning how to be resourceful, find things I wanted to know myself. And this was before AI really went crazy as well. So I couldn't ask the chatbots anything. It was really just me, an internet connection, and using the material that was provided to me to solve the problems that were in that time in the format of assignments and tutorial papers. But fast forward 5 years, are now in the problem of Australia's energy transition. So different problems, but high agency is all about being able to see a problem as the same, something that must be solved, and using the tools at your discretion or based upon your recent perspectives and experiences, applying that to the current problem and just finding a solution. So in this video, I've summarized why it's important to have high agency, how you can develop throughout university, and as a function of COVID, I believe a lot of us university students in the past 5 years were forced to develop high agency. And then number three, how simply it translates to success in industry. The only thing left is then applying this high agency to find your career in energy. Now, recently I published a video where I broke down the 6 steps to achieve your first engineering role in the energy sector in this video right here. So click that link to watch it and I'll see you there.